All right, before the break, look at the syllabus and policies, all of that stuff, get the bookkeeping out of the way. So now we're ready to get into some content stuff. Today, there's some lecture notes to go through on background information, protocols and stuff. Usually our lectures is going to be examples. There might be small diagrams put on the board or something, but in general, we're going to be following along examples and talking about it as we write the code. But there's some background stuff we got to cover. We'll get to that in just a second because I think I'm going to go ahead and do this other part first. One of the assignments this week is set up a place to host your websites. There's some instructions spelled out in module 1, but since we will make a simple thing, after we talk about background stuff, probably won't have a whole lot of time to do much more than say hello world on the screen, but we might want to do that before the end of the day. So let's go ahead and set up our domain hosting site. So you can use other ones if you know of one or want to look around, right? Doesn't have to shop around, see what else is out there. Search for probably free domain hosting sites because free is nice. One thing to keep in mind, this is a software development class. It's hard to see as a student, and there's all that pretty expensive stuff, right? Really expensive IDEs, really expensive domain hosting sites. And remember when after you graduate and you're out there making really good software developer money, the IRS is going to want a huge, huge chunk of that. So those things like that, the domain hosting site, the IDE you use to develop all your stuff, that is a tax write-off. That is a business expense. So keep that in mind after graduation. Obviously through school, right? Free stuff because use free stuff through school, but remember that stuff is a business expense. So, and when you're out there making software developer money, the sort of thing where like the Social Security amount maxes out and they stop deducting that from your paycheck, then you're going to want to have lots of itemized deductions. And for software developers, the software you use is a business expense. You can search, look through some of the ones that are out there. I'm going to use this one. I found this a few years ago, infinityfree.com. There's a few things it's a free site. They use a lot of the same standards as some of the other free sites. What I like about this one is somebody had the idea to show ads on the backside. So the developer making websites and posting them also sees advertisements, and that pays for a lot of things that don't show up in the normal free domain hosting sites. I know a lot of people don't like ads, but somebody's got to pay for it, and I like it a lot better when they pay for it than when I pay for it. But having ads on the back end too, it pays for things that we normally don't see in free domain hosting sites. They basically have unlimited databases. They say unlimited. You can have the limit is 400, but there's no limit on tables in those databases. So you can set up the free things. So infinityfree.com and log in or create an account button. You just want to create an account with your username or your regular email or a couple emails. You can get up to 3 accounts per websites. So 3 domains with each account you set up. So I use a couple of my email addresses, and I think I have like 6 domains running at most times on this one, which are usually used for testing stuff. Because again, if you're making money off of it, it's nice to have that itemized deduction come tax season and pay for something. But for free ones, they're great for testing and stuff. You can get up to 3 accounts after you set up your account. Sign in, and I should have signed in on another one. It looks like I already have 3 here. I can probably delete one of these. So this one, SDEV153-spring 2024 free.nf, that's where I'm going to post all of our class examples. So I don't want to delete that one. guess I can delete this again. And again, yes, it adds on the back end, and there's a big X is behind the Zoom thumbnails. Those are the ads. I'm used to seeing those everywhere anyway, and that pays for a lot of functionality that we don't normally get on free hosting sites.
So by account, is that just each website, you can have 3 websites basically?
Oh, Keith, excuse me for 1 second. I was not able to log in the guest account. It was the one I tried last week.
It worked last night.
Mm-hmm. It was the password I gave Lloyd last night, so. Yeah, so once you set up your account, they'll send an email and you have to confirm it. There might be like one confirmation or something. Just click through the confirmation, so eventually you'll get to a page like this. Where's my delete button? Probably under account settings. Deactivate account. So I'm going to shut this one down and actually go through the process of setting one up. Oops, right as I click that, I noticed that this one actually had a domain name that I pay for. We pay for good names, that is one thing. It went on.
Yeah.
We write it down, maybe I had the wrong one?
Yeah, I think you may have. Got these right up here.
So let's see, so. Here we go. Here. Okay, so that one's deactivating. So now I have this, the button's purple, says create account. This is what you should see when you go on there. Just click that and choose the free one, which they also have paid ones, obviously get more. Okay, that's new. That's not what it was last week.
Well, it has been because I haven't changed it.
Okay,
That's one I just used, got in.
okay, thank you.
You can give that to them.
Okay, so I had the wrong password on that earlier. Apologize for that. We want to go with the free account. I don't know what this paid one is. I can uncheck that.
Which site are you on?
This is that one I've been using, that Infinity Free.
I'll put test websites out there for people to demo. I like that.
Maybe I have to wait until the one that finishes deleting.
Do you want us to use our personal email? The having tech when we register.
I use my Ivy Tech, whichever one you want to use will be fine. Because what you'll do is you will send me a link to it. I might have to log in with my other account to go through the steps. If I know the password. Nope. Apparently don't know my other password. Yeah, the button's grayed out, so I have to wait till they finish deleting it, and then I should be able to create another account. But basically, you'll go here to the create a new account, and the one you see will look like, once it creates, it'll look like this. The buttons are all grayed out. It takes a few minutes. That's why I wanted to do this first. There's a step-by-step guide. Sorry, I should have deleted that account before I went in. And when you're setting it up, you'll see this page looks like this, and they'll ask for a domain name. So you put one in, whatever you want to call it, and then choose from one of the extensions there. The free ones all have, there's several to choose from. There's like .nf, whatever I have there, EPIZY, a couple to choose from. Good names do cost money though. We'll go over how to purchase a good name from a registrar and set those up before the end of the semester. The one I use, I've been going through Google Names for a couple years and it's like $12 a year. It's basically $1 a month for a URL name. Yes. That's the low end. So, they also can get very, very expensive. Okay, so they finished deactivating it. Hopefully I only have 2 accounts now. So you go in there and click create on the free account. Don't need to go pay for anything. And you'll just set up some domain name. So we need, I'll call this in-class-153. And then choose the extension. You'll notice they're not the greatest extensions. These are subdomains, all of other things. But just choose one, but we copy and paste URLs anyway, right? So it's not like people are going to type them in a lot. But, I'll go with rf.gd. I have no idea what those letters are standing for, but some sort of thing. Check the availability. If it's available, you'll just they give you an account, a password that you'll use on like the databases and stuff like that. It just generates a random one. I'll keep it like that. I'll keep that one. This account's gonna get deleted before long anyway. And then hit create account, and it just takes a few minutes to open it up. Go hit this open control panel. And you'll see this message saying approve or reject something. I have never got an email from them except for if your website does not get any visitors in 90 days, they'll shut it down to save resources. That's the only emails I have ever gotten from them is like, nobody's visited in 90 days. Do you want to, we're going to shut it down unless you log on and hit the keep it going button or something. That's the only emails I've ever gotten from them. And this is what we're looking at here is cPanel. So this is a bunch of built-in extra features. We won't need too many of these. File managers, so multiple types of databases. You can do subdomains, so you can set subdomains off the one you're having. We won't need that in this class where it's going to make web pages and use our basic domain we set up. PHP CNAME is where when we buy a good username or buy a good URL, that goes into the CNAME records. So that's where we tell it how to keep track of the name. Different things the server can do, a lot of features, and yeah, they have advertising. So this one pays for more than we normally get with free domain hosting sites. That's why I like to use this one, but you are free to use whichever one you would like to use.
Would subdomains be like other web pages that are part of your website?
So like the Ivy Tech sites, right over here, I'm on ivylearn.ivytech.edu. Or we have my.ivytech.edu.
Okay, that's right.
So the domain is ivytech.edu, and then there's subdomains of the other the my.ivytech or ivylearn.ivytech, or the actual website ivytech.edu. When you hit the finish button, you'll see this page. This is what we usually log on to. Softalicious is where you would install content management services. That's the SDEV 155 class, which ultimately what we're learning here is to make content management services. So ultimately the code we write in this class, we're going to, in the long run, write programs that write this code. But we have to write this code ourselves a few times before we can reasonably create, like, say, a Python script that has HTML and CSS as output.
And so that's just like the user-friendly UI for slapping things together in the website. That's what you're talking
The drag and drop. Yeah, drag your mouse around and click on stuff, and that's how most of it, and it writes all the HTML and CSS code in the background. But if you're in this class, then you should be on the path to create those things, not use those things. And the 155 class is where you use those, because obviously you probably want to use them a time or two before you make them. File manager is where we upload and download files, so we'll get back to here when we get to our first example in a few minutes. But before we do that, there's some background stuff we need to cover. We'll go quick because we've always talked about it before the break. There is that history of the web, history of HTML, CSS, and websites as we know it. An essay due by the end of the semester. So you'll dig deep into history. So just sort of history and protocol things. I'll put that as a label. History and protocols. Just a quick summary. So you've seen the words in a few places. So late 1960s, everybody had a history class, kind of know what was going on in the world in the late 1960s, particular Cold War era. Weapons had reached the point of mutually assured destruction. Weapons got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it had reached mutually assured destruction. So naturally, the military wanted a way to keep communication around after they destroy everything else in the world. Like, oh, we might still need to communicate and continue fighting for some reason. But they gave that task to some researchers. There's a lot of money put into research and development at the time. So they asked these scientists, what's a great way to make sure communications can stay live after mutually assured destruction? And what they came up with was this idea of ARPANET. The Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. And really it's a protocol of how this works. So we'd have several sites around a thing, right? So worried about communication between these two sites, I'll label them A and B here. But those aren't the only, so we have that communication channel, but that one channel can easily be broken and then lose all communication between those two sites. But those sites aren't in isolation, right? There's gonna be some other ones. So C, D, let's go around this way, E and F. And there's actually communication channels between all of these different sites, right? Of all these different communication channels. So instead of just taking that best route sort of thing, what if there was a protocol that checked what the best route was? That's where we get internet protocol.
Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy.
Yes. Or IP. Basically just a ping. So we'd have a message that needs to go from site A to site B. It's going to ping every machine it knows about. It's going to send out a ping to see who responds. And whichever one responds first, it assumes that's the best route. Because that's definitely an open route. That is a lot. That communication channel is still open. So maybe we have something that goes from A to B. So site A sends out a ping. Here's from everything. Maybe site E is the first one to respond. So it sends the packet or sends the information to site E with from A to B. Then E is going to do the same thing. It's going to ping every machine it knows about. And maybe site C is the first one to respond. Right? We want to keep it simple. So it just pings everything, and the first response is the winner. That's where, because we know that channel has to be open. So once it gets it, sends that along, adds a little bit of information to it. So now this message is going from site A to site B. I'll just write via here, by way of site E. It needs to keep track of where it's been before, because we don't want it just stuck bouncing between these two sites and never reach, tie up the line and never reach any destination. C repeats, maybe B is the first response, so then it gets it to the destination. Source, destination. So basically, the information is allowed to choose its own route through the network, whatever way works best. And I want to put allows the information to choose any available path to reach its destination, and yeah, it uses in simplest possible way. Well, this network grew and grew and grew. A number of protocols. There was researchers involved and other things. A number of protocols went along the way for what is this information? How do we package it? Right? Are we sending an entire text file? Is it a recorded message? How do we organize that to get across there? And more importantly, how do we make sure that it is correct when it gets to the other side? A lot of protocols came and went along the way, but one that really stood out is transmission control protocol, or TCP. You've probably heard those letters, TCP/IP. This was thought of early, but there's a lot of overhead in it. So basically, what it does is it breaks the information into small packets. Into packets. And each packet, I'll just stop there and talk about that. That's good for the notes. It breaks it up into little packets, adds a little bit of metadata on it, saying like this is part one, part two, part three. This is how we put it back together. Has anybody had a networking class, NETI 104, 109?
Taking some on my Udemy wall shame.
Remember the OSI model? So TCP is the OSI model. So you have the data link layer, physical layer, how it's actually being transmitted, the data link layer, how it fits together, all the way up to the application layer. What software does it run with when you put it back together? I like to do a picture of something like this. So there's our, whatever our data set we want to transmit is, and we just kind of break it up into little pieces arbitrarily, so it's not logical. So if it's text file, right, a text file, we're not going to break it up in lines. We're just going to grab a certain number of bits and just send those bits, and then we'll break it up otherwise. So it's not a logical breakup. And then each packet is going to find its own way through the network based off the IP protocol. So we break it up into little pieces, and then there's just lots of little pieces traveling across that, finding their own way through the network. So the information itself, it also adds an extra layer of very primitive security, but the information itself is taking different routes through the network. So somebody monitoring site D trying to grab anything that goes past isn't going to see all of it. They're not going to see the whole, nobody in particular site sees the whole picture. And obviously, in order to do this, we need information about how's it go together, which what order does it go in, how do we know if it came through correctly? We're only transmitting around Earth, so we just do a basic checksum, which is parity. So even or odd number of bits, we have a bunch of ones and zeros. We add all those up together, we either have an even or odd number, right? So we just add one more bit, and then we can make sure that every packet that comes through has an even number of bits. So if something comes through with an odd number of bits, we know that data got corrupted in route. Little things like that work for around Earth. That camera we sent to Pluto, that obviously isn't gonna work for that, but quick transmission around Earth. Right, just check the parity. We add one more bit to our data, and if we already have an even number of bits, we put a 0 in that extra spot. If we have an odd number of bits, we put a 1 in that spot, so that everything that comes through is even, and then we can check and see if it's valid. Have some overhead saying what order it goes in, what software it opens with, what route it took through the network, all of that. So there's a lot of overhead with it. It checks itself. That checksum is kind of nice. Anybody ever sit there and waited on a website, see the little thing spinning, and it seems like it's taking longer than it should? That's the computer's going, oh, something went wrong, send it again. Something went wrong, send it again. So one of the packets came through with an odd number of bits. And the computer's just like, oh, something went wrong, send it again. So it just went back and retraced that, send it again, hopefully to a different destination, and computers will just sit there and do that forever. That's usually that's what we wait on more often than anything else whenever it seems like it's taking up a website a long time to load. But there's extra overhead and stuff there, right? Sending it again, all that metadata we have to add in order to say how to put it back together.
Especially back at that time.
Yes.
That's so much
Especially in the 60s.
very limited processing power. That would actually be a significant hurdle.
Yes, so it wasn't until about the mid 1980s that it was feasible for the average computer to do it. Right, there's a few computers like in the 1960s, Norway had by far the several largest supercomputers in the world. They had no trouble with it, but
You know, all those things are less.
yeah, Indiana University, their computer mine wasn't quite so good, and they would have been tied in there. So by the mid 1980s, what we would call the average computer, and really the cabling, improvements in cabling allowed for more rapid transmission, made it feasible. So, but pretty much since then, everything's been TCP IP, and we haven't looked back because it's quick and easy. It's easy to implement. You take a networking class, you'll see thousands of pages in textbooks trying to describe that. It's 19 lines of code. And when you write that 19 lines of code, you'll understand it way, way better than doing this. Anybody going to a 4-year program after this, IUS and Bellarmine and Campbellsville, all three of them, I can say for certain that they will have you type those protocols. They will type in the 300 level class there, they will have you write up those protocols. When you write those 19 lines of code, it's usually like at IUS, they give it to you in C++ and you have to rewrite it in Java. You understand it way, way better than reading a 1,000-page book in a networking class. That's the thing about computers, right? Computers can only do simple stuff. So when our explanations start to get complicated, you know we've drifted away from it a little bit. The machine has to be doing something simple. But yeah, since the 1980s, once it became feasible, with all the overhead and cost on cabling, make sure there's plenty enough cables that can all handle the speed, because if this line is really high speed, but this one's super slow, or this line's really high speed, but then this one that we're actually relying on somewhere in the step is super slow, things are going to back up. And, but once it was feasible, it's pretty much the protocol that most networks have gone with since then. By the 1990s,
It's amazing sometimes how fast they figured out something that just lacked the technology to support it in some instances.
yeah, because they didn't know they needed better wires until they invented something that needed better wires. Is it okay if I erase this first section? So we don't have to go and move the camera for the Zoom people and stuff. Right. For those who haven't had me before, I always like to check that, because I remember sitting in many classes, like trying to keep up on notes and stuff, and boards would get erased. Or sometimes lectures would continue while the board's being erased, and then there's just a gap in the notes and diagrams. So by early 1990s, 1990s. ARPANET had become the internet. All right, and all. The internet. Internet just means network between things, kind of like interstate. We have the same terms. We have internet, intranet, and extranet, like we have on highways. We don't have any extra highways around here. Closest one I know of is in West Virginia. It's like way up in the mountains, and you have to cross state line over into Maryland because there's no way to get over the mountain in Virginia, and there's nothing in Maryland around there, so it's Virginia highway. So it's extra to the state it's in. Intra is inside, so like Wi-Fi signals inside of a building are a good example of an intra one. There's more complicated examples, and inter is between, just like interstate is the highway that runs across multiple states. Lots and lots and lots of them out there in the world, but the article we put on it, instead of an internet, it became the internet that kind of trumps all the others.
Also, just kind of makes sense to ship that into the private sector, because then you have hundreds of people all maintaining it as opposed to just the government. The original idea that
Yeah, for the original big full one, yeah. Like Ivy Tech has multiple internets. Right here, the Sellersburg campus, we have 2 buildings. So we have connection. We obviously have to have connection between the 2 buildings, so inter between. And we have a connection to the other Ivy Tech campuses, want to keep private. And then we need to tie it into the actual internet itself, which here at Ivy Tech campus, we have a fiber optic cable running straight up to an actual internet. The internet backbone is up in South Bend. So we have more directly than your home internet service provider. But that lots of colleges that, yeah, it started as a research and a college thing. So most colleges and universities have a few things better than the typical internet service provider makes available. But there's different levels, but there's not one overarching one that kind of ties everything together. And around this time, another unique idea formulated. Right, we're talking earlier, we had those talking about data sets that might be huge. I just kind of drew a block there and referenced the file, but maybe it's an encyclopedia. Maybe we want to send everything all the information on Wikipedia is our information. It could be a lot, could be a little, different amounts. And obviously, large sets of information or large sets of data are going to use up the resources way too heavily, unnecessarily, especially if people don't need them. So in the early 1990s, another idea formulated. How about instead of sending you all this information, why don't I just send you the network address so that you can go get it if you want it? And then what we send is just a small, what became known as hyperlinks. That's what developed into hypertext transfer protocol, HTTP. Instead of sending you this whole data set, how about I just, instead of all this, or in red, right here. It's here. I'll just take the spot it's located on the internet, and I'll send that to you because that's this nice short thing. It'll come through really, really quickly. And then if you want this information, then you can go get it yourself. The idea of hyperlink. And that's what really made it take off. Also started allowing commercial traffic. A little bit earlier than that, the commercial traffic was kind of slow to take off because commercial traffic had massive data sets that would bog that down. And that's kind of what led into, even though it was slow to take off, the massive data sets from the first commercial traffic kind of led in like, oh, we might need to make some changes here. So that's the third program. The third main protocol, which obviously is probably expect it's gonna be a quiz question or something, right? Hypertext transmission protocol.
Good old HTTP.
Yeah. It'll take a second to say this, because most of y'all might be fairly early in the programming pathway, right? Protocol, anytime we want to type protocol, that's ://. Y'all have already done that, you probably just didn't know that's what that symbol. So HTTP : that is actually saying hypertext transfer protocol, use this protocol.
Anything before that is a protocol.
Yes, FTP for file transfer protocol, SCP for secure copy. Like FTPS, because we probably want the secure version. Like FTPS : that's secure file transfer. Whatever we want to type in there. Some of y'all may have had database classes already. Localhost port 3306 : that's say use MySQL protocol transfer stuff. Or connecting to MySQL, so use all the protocols that come with MySQL. But that's what that means whenever you type that. So when you're typing that in your code, if you want to use a specific protocol, you actually type : A little side step there, just to, since that word keeps showing up on there, and that may not be explicitly stated in any of your textbooks, they probably just kind of leave it there to figure out along the way. Oh yeah, and then we have the S. Right, add secure at the end and get HTTPS.
Which is the thing that is used nowadays.
Yes, the secure is good. So those domain hosting sites we looked at, one we just quickly set up, it's going to be HTTP. We will see how to add the secure thing in it. We just we just get a digital certificate and fill out a form and say, like, yeah, it's fairly straightforward. We'll see how to add the S on it before the end of the semester. That's the major ones, but y'all probably heard all of them before. So just kind of confirming the vocabulary here. I'm sure we know that. We send HTTP information through TCP/IP to reliably and accurately arrive at a destination. And the fact that everybody showed up for class today, I think is confirmation that it does work reliably and accurately, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, almost half the class is listening to it through these protocols right now. I guess we're ready to actually write some code, do some stuff. Let's look at HTML. Anybody have any questions about the protocols? Really quick background. Y'all have an history. That's the topic for your history. HTML essay is history of the web. There's lots of fine details. Whatever part interests you the most, you can bring in there, right? If you're interested in the early development, the pure science aspect of it, your essay is going to be heavy in the 60s and 70s. You're interested in the commercial and business aspects when they came in the late 80s, what led to the hypertext ideas, and then the early 1990s .com bubble and all of that. Changes in gaming things over the years, but you can focus on a specific thing. You don't have to all write the exact same history essay. Focus on what you're interested in. When we get to that, I'm concerned with the formatting. Can you make the web page look like it's a properly formatted essay using code instead of clicking a button in Microsoft Word? So most people find that very fun when we get to that. So you'll dive a little bit deeper into history there. Anybody have any questions before we actually get into example? And yeah, most of our lectures are going to be more like this second part here. I'm gonna keep this up and yeah, I'm gonna close that and we'll come back there. That's where we would upload our files. There's also an editor, so we could edit the files right there. Actually, yeah. Well, I already closed it. I probably should have done that. So one thing we will need is a text editor. Everybody used some sort of text editor before, have one you like.
I think Visual Studio Code will handle it.
VS Code is very popular. VS Code is installed on these, which by the way, earlier, I had the wrong password. It's the town name and the zip code. Which was updated since, it still had the 2022 in the one I thought it was. So that was around for a couple years, but same misspelling of the town name with the zip code 47172. But we'll get back to that soon. Everybody in the classroom has laptops. VS Code, I did have that installed on these laptops. There's some other text editors. If you're heading into programming, you might want to look for text editors. So we don't need, not a document editor. We don't need any fancy editing. We want the thing that's just pure Unicode. Just every character is 16 bits. The rawest form as it comes straight off the keyboard. That's how we feed instructions into the machine. Texteditor.co, the one that's built into Google Drive, that's useful. I use Sublime Text, that's what I'm going to be using. You can use it for free forever. I have a paid for license. It's $90 when I bought the license. I think last time I looked, which was about a year and a half ago, it was up to 100. So it's not bad like some other ones. It has a lot of nice functionality. It's fully customizable and stuff. It's not bloated down with things that aren't needed like some of the other ones. But you can use whichever text editor you want, or I would kind of encourage trying different ones. Or them, any Vim users. That's the one that is a little bit different because it was the original Vim is virtual input improved, and the improvement came in 1991. That's the one, the virtual input, the text editor from the 1970s. So there's a few things like copy is Y instead of C, because one of the terms that when they were debating terms to go with, the one option was yank and put instead of copy and paste. I think we should have went with that. That's the thing to say, but maybe it wouldn't be fun. It's fun if we said that all the time. But it started in the 1970s. That's the one that comes with the bash terminal if anybody's a Linux user. And I haven't used that, but there's lots and lots of them out there. So Notepad++ has been popular for a while. I'll be using Sublime Text Editor. You can use it forever for free, make money, or for other stuff. It's open source, but it is a $100 license, which is fairly inexpensive. And when you get a license, if you don't have a license up here at the top, it says unregistered version. And when you buy the license, it says the file name up there. Again, back to that thing I mentioned earlier, when you pay for the software, that's an itemized deduction on taxes.
What's the main difference between paid and unpaid?
On Sublime? Yeah. That of the title bar, it says unregistered version. Up here at the title, at the top, it says you don't have a license.
I didn't know if there were features or something.
It's open source. You can use it entirely for free. It's fully customizable. If I go to settings, the settings are all JSON. So you just go in there and do it. It's not, what I like best about it is it's not bloated and loaded down. Because some things they keep adding functions to it and adding features and adding features and adding features. And then you get like what VS Code replaced a few years ago, which was Visual Studio, which started out as a great little IDE, but they kept adding stuff and ultimately became, when they replaced it with VS Code, it was basically like a 14 gigabyte text editor. Because they kept adding features and adding features and adding features. So I like to use the small, minimized thing, but a place to write text, just a pure Unicode text. I'll be using this. That domain hosting site has it has an editor in there. So if you want, you can edit your files right there. I should have did that before I closed this. So I mean, files open. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing a file. There's a couple things I wanted to type. I'm just going to put some letters here, but I'm going to hit save first. Because one thing you want in a text editor is you want lexing. That comes from lexicon of a language. That's where it changes colors and predicts words and stuff. The lexicon of the language you're coding in. And in order to do that, all of our text editors know lots and lots of languages. There's a button somewhere to look through them, but we have to tell the computer which language we're typing in so that it knows what it is. So what I usually do is just go save the file with the correct file extension. I'll go over to the delete folder. I always have a working folder called delete where I do all my work, and then every couple of days I delete it. I learned a long time ago not to keep files on a local machine. And then whenever I need to do like factory reset, I don't have to worry about digging through every single thing on there to figure out if it needs kept or anything, because I never keep things for more than 2 or 3 days locally. I'll go ahead and call it this. So index.html. Index is a special name. The server knows to start with a file called index. Obviously, we can override that. We can go to the server and tell it what to start with. But in general, most of your servers are going to be set up to start with a file called index. And then the extension is the part for the computer. So .html, or some people just really like 3-letter extensions instead of arbitrary numbers. Some people do HTM or HTMA will behave different on some systems. So that's a valid one, but once we get it on the server, but for locally, it will behave differently on your local machine. So I'm just going to do .html, and index is what the server knows to start on the index page, or the page called index. So give it that name, and now the computer knows it's HTML, so I can actually type an angle bracket and an H. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So I typed HTM and got all of that code. We'll be doing that before long. So that's from the predictive text. I can't remember what the shortcut in VS Code is. I know several people are probably using VS Code. Let me look up the shortcut. HTML template in VS Code is Command Shift 1.
In VS Code, there's just a drop down menu, like if you open up a new file, it'll just say, "What's the language?" And you click on it, it'll just really pull up a list of everything it has.
Oh yes. There's multiple ways to do it. Most of them will have a language listing. If you're using that, Command Shift 1 or Control Shift 1 will do what I just did with the predictive text. So we have angle brackets, so we use those a lot. I'm just going to start typing HT, so it shows up on there when HTML is on there. I'll click that and then get all the stuff we need to do. We'll mostly do that, but we want to talk about what it is first. Probably 3 times, right? See it and then review it. That way we remember what it is. So hypertext markup language. Oh. Let me zoom in. Zoom in. Let me just go change text size. I see you people squinting into that. So if I go to settings, I'm in Sublime, so like instead of 13, let's make that. Let's try 18. And just type in JSON. All the settings are just done in JSON. That's one of the things I really like about Sublime.
What was it that you did to get all the header and all that?
So started angle bracket to create a tag, and then I typed HT and then hit that. But I'm going to type everything out here of what we want in those templates. So we use angle brackets for tags, and we're going to talk about tags in more detail Monday. Well, yeah, most of our class examples are going to follow along lectures. The first couple lectures I've learned to go slow, so y'all get used to me, because you may have noticed by now that we're 2 hours into this, you may have noticed that I am easily distracted. So I try to start out slow so that you get used to how I write things. The basic format is we have an opening tag, then we have our content, and then slash open tag. Notice how it let me make a new one up there right away immediately. That'll be important before long. So there's an opening tag which says content starts here. Our data starts here. Then we have our actual data. And in the opening tag, we can also put some metadata about that stuff. And then a closing tag, notice looks the same as the opening one, only there's a little slash. That's the markup part. We identified that this particular text is marked up to identify it as something specific. That open tag I just did for the reference there. More commonly, maybe, well, our most common one's probably going to be paragraphs. Some words, and then in the paragraph tag, the entire thing is called an element. An opening tag, closing tag. We'll see attributes, and in the opening tag, we can put some metadata, like say, make that blue and make it bold, all of that stuff. But we identify that particular text that we're worried about and create an element with that. We're in preview mode today. We'll talk about that soon. It's really nice for a computer. Let me undo that because notice we have, let me add some sort of attribute in there. So like, I don't know, on click, let's do something. It's just kind of an arbitrary thing, but there's something that happens when we click that text now. That we'd have to write that up in JavaScript, so jumping ahead there, but it's metadata about that text we created. So the format, let me stretch that out so it doesn't work out. We feed it into the computer as our data starts here, a list of metadata. Then we have our actual metadata. And then we have a mark that says where that data ends, which is actually the format that it passes through the CPU in. Starts here and stores in RAM and stores in storage, gets stored in long-term storage. Data starts here, metadata about it, all those ones and zeros for the computer, then the data itself, then the data ends here. So it's the nice markup languages make that nice crossover point where it's human readable in the order the computer needs it in. So we get some efficiency advantages and stuff. Those have a few tags. I'll type them all this time. The first one we want to type is optional, but you want to take this option. It's Andrea.
I need glasses.
I should have said something earlier. Even before the pandemic shut everything down and we started having Zoom calls everywhere, I would transmit the software development lectures across the internet because our examples are writing code. It's hard to read. So even if you're in the classroom, it doesn't hurt to log into that. I do have the password for these computers in front of you. We'll make sure and write it on the board Monday. Because if you're on your laptop, then you can log into one of the lab computers and have something close by to see. Let's sort of preview mode today. So this first one tells whatever machine we load this on what type of data it is. We're saying it's HTML5. HTML is what we put for HTML5. And HTML4, we had to put a whole address where to look up the specific version of HTML4 we were using. HTML5 standardized a lot of things, but I was around for that change. And this tag is optional because everything we do these days should be HTML5 by default. But one of these days, we're going to go to HTML6. And I was around for the change from 4 to 5. If there was a document that you did not have that tag in, or in a couple years from now when we go to 6, if there's an HTML document that you do not have that doc type declaration in, you'll have to go back and put it in, or that web page will stop working. And it's a lot easier to put it in the first time. So that is optional, but you really want to take that option for whenever HTML updates to HTML6 at some point in the future. You're going to have to go back and put that in every single website you want to keep up. Web page. So every web page on every website you want to keep up.
But wouldn't it still, so I guess HTML5 would just be doc type HTML forever, and then HTML6 will be something new?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. HTML, or they might switch HTML5 to refer to a website, but it will automatically update. HTML6 will probably be something new
That was my thought of,
though. It'll probably be HTML6, and they actually write that on there, and then HTML7 and HTML8. I think they wanted to standardize it and clean it up. That was the biggest things with 5. Okay, now we get into our actual tags, those opening and closing lists. The first one we want, I was going to do HTML. And I'm going to go ahead and if I type a slash, my text editor will finish it. All I need is that slash to say we're up to the closing tag. Depending on the text editor you use, you want to get used to how the predictive text goes. So here we have the HTML tag. If I hit tab, oh, I did the whole thing. I didn't want to do all that. HTML. No, but that's the little S here means it's going to do the whole thing. Your predictive text might work a little bit differently, so I'm just going to do the slash. Make sure you know how the predictive text works, because computers never make a typo. That's a human trait. Let the computer type as much as possible. Yeah, you have a discussion board that uses AI chatbot generators. I've been promoting those things for a long time because they are great at writing code. To an extent, especially the latest generation of chatbots that got popular, do not trust their code. Always test their code more thoroughly than you test your own code. But for years before that, bots were great at AI bots were pretty good at writing code. So, but
the heck happened?
All the writing stuff, making it look nice. It will, yeah, the way the current ones try to go for the nicest looking sentence. It tries to do that with your code. Like, oh, this asterisk looks bad here. Let's not use that. Which will be corrected at some point, but currently the corrected version you have to pay for. So actually, that's probably what happened. They realized that they could make mistakes in the code and then charge people for the ones that don't do it. But notice our opening and closing tag, and then we need to put stuff in between it. Everything in between is HTML code, hypertext markup language. And we can put other tags in there. So I'm just going to put one H1. That's a level 1 header, and just do quick hello world. Hello world, not worlds.
Has to be indented relative.
The indentation, it does not have to be indented. Indentation is for you. Indentation is for readability. That white space will get deleted before the web browser shows it. Actually, before it gets transmitted, the server will delete the white space to ease on transmission, and your browser will add it back in if anybody wants to view the code, but it will be deleted before the browser shows the website. So the white space is only for you. Spread your code out, make it easy to find stuff. But notice inside of this tag is another tag, and then there's the text sort of data inside of that. So there's a lot of nesting going on, layers like that. That's enough to see something on screen. I'm going to hit save. I'll just hit Control S real quick to save that. And then I'm going to go over to where that's stored in the files, index.html, and notice it's got the Google icon, or you might see Edge or Safari, whatever your default browser is. You should see that icon. So when we double click on it, you'll notice in the address bar we have file : / so file protocol for C drive users, the address where it's stored, and there's those words. We can right click and view page source. So here's what it looks like here's what the file looked like itself. Or right click, and one we were using a lot is inspect. So that opens up our developer tools, our debuggers. So like over in the source code, here's a debugger where we can go step by step through code. We don't usually need to do that with encoding stuff, but we can get to scripting stuff for your website, which we will see in module 6. You want to look there. A console for output, for any output we could put in there, echoes or print lines, things like that. the elements. So here's the collapsed version of it. So white space gets deleted and it will always format it nicely here. Emulators. So here's what it would look like on iPhone XR. So we can pull up different emulators and see it, different views. That button was right here. So which that is also F12 on pretty much any browser. F12 opens your inspector panel. Let me close that. This is a brand new computer. Do I need the function key or do I do this? Oh, I gotta hit function. Okay, on my last computer, the function key got the picture and then the button by itself did the F. So F12 opens that inspector panel pretty much on any of your browsers. You can also right click. You'll find that, and we'll spend a lot of time there because this is our information. See information down here about how it's styled. It's being displayed as a block with 8-pixel margins on all 4 sides. Then we can go over and change our code. So like, oh, maybe I didn't want a level 1 header. We have 6 headers. H1's the biggest, H6 is the smallest. So whatever level of headers. So maybe we want to just do a regular paragraph, which is P. I'll save that, reload it, and we can see it all updated just to normal text, like we go in a paragraph. See different things here. We'll spend a lot of time in the inspector panel, viewing the code, debugging our encoding scheme. There's some other stuff you might have noticed in that the starter files. We have this head section and body section. That's what we'll talk about Monday. That is good form. Since it's already been a while and we're just in preview mode now, I'm just going to stop at the hello world there so we can get it uploaded to the internet. But the way I like to think about this here in preview mode is the head is more like mind. So this is internal data. Internal to the computer, this is stuff, metadata, things that we want the computer to know, and then the body is what we see. So anything like the paragraphs, the headers, the footers, all the styling, design stuff, like the name of the course, goes in the body, and then metadata, which you can see that template has meta up here. Like metadata use character set of UTF-8, so just the regular Unicode. We don't have Egyptian hieroglyphics. We have to do extra steps to get to type Egyptian hieroglyphics because even all the symbols in Unicode weren't quite enough to get everything humans use. We have to insert images if we want to type in Egyptian hieroglyphics. Otherwise, we'd have to go to a bigger. We'd have to change that character set to the next step up of Unicode. There's a lot more in there too. That's just the only one I know off the top of my head. Have to use pictures for Egyptian hieroglyphs, or you can go up to the next Unicode, the 24-bit Unicode. You can type in Egyptian hieroglyphs. That's the only one I know from that bigger set, but there's a lot of symbols in that bigger set.
I imagine a lot of the Asian languages would be included in that because they're also pictographic.
Oh, they're all in basic Unicode.
Really? No,
Yeah, 'cause
they're a living one, yeah.
Yeah, they're a living language. Yeah, they're a lot of dead languages. So cuneiform's probably in there, and maybe some other ancient ones. But anyway, that'll work for our basic one. Maybe I'll change that back to a H3, a medium layer level header, so it's not so big. We'll see style rules, things like that, make it look a little bit better. But it's already been a couple hours today, so I think we're pretty much just ready to get this uploaded, right? So I'm going to go back to that infinityfree.com, log in, and here's that one for in class. So I'll go over here, ignore the ads. That does pay for extra features. So other free domain hosting sites, you'll notice, have a few less things. And mostly in this class, we'll go to File Manager. So I'll go to File Manager, and this is Monsta. This is one that is usually not free. This is one of the nicer ones. This is a file, a popular file transfer protocol software that is usually not free. This is one of the things that the advertisers pay for. So on some of the other free domain hosting sites, you'll have another one. See this folder right here, HT docs? That is from an Apache server. The things that you want to show on your website go in the folder called HT docs. We'll see that in a couple settings, but we are in an Apache 1 server, so all of our websites need to go in an HT docs, but
do not open upload files.
do not upload files here, put them in HT docs. Right now there's an index there by default. Let me copy this web address. Where's the web address? So domains. Here it is. I guess I can just click on it, open a new tab. So here's the default web page. Notice they have that index.html. They call it index2. That way, whenever we upload our own index.html, index overrides index2. Or we can right click on it and delete it.
Fancy.
Yeah, here's the other half of that. Files should be uploaded here. Right click and delete it, and then down here we have upload, edit, new. We can just create a new file here and do stuff right here. I'm going to upload this one. Upload file, and then navigate to where it's at on your computer. So now there's that file, and notice if if you're on a Windows machine, you have to right click because it works a lot better if you're on a Mac or Linux. If you're on a Windows machine, right click so it doesn't put your menu behind stuff. It still did, didn't it?
Behind what?
Notice I'm trying to get to the edit button, which is up here at the top.
Oh,
The dot means go up a level, so let me go up and back in here, see if that fixes it. There it is. And then under edit, we have an editor right here. Before I change that though, I'm gonna come over here and hit reload. And notice that we get rid of the extra chunk there. That web address pulls up that site we were just looking at locally. Biggest thing to watch out for is most of us in here are probably typing our HTML code on a Windows or a Mac, right? Windows and Macs are not case sensitive, but we're loading it onto a Linux server, which is case sensitive. So if you have a picture profile.ping with a capital P, and you write it in your code with a lowercase p on your Windows or Mac, it's going to work fine when you test it. And then when you upload it, it's not going to be able to find that picture because Linux is case sensitive. So watch. If it works on your machine and not on the server, go through and check your capitalization, especially for like file names on images and things like that. Images and links. So there's that index page open, and notice we can edit it here. Let's maybe change that back to a level 1 header.
so in other words, copy and paste is your friend when it comes to making sure you get the right things for anything.
Yes. And then the save button's down here. This one, since it runs in this editor right here runs in a browser. If you try Control S, let me move some numbers out of the way. Just realize they're blocking it on TV. If you use Control S, it tries to save the web page. So you have to come hit the save button or hit the checkbox for autosave, and then it just saves while you're typing it. You save that, and now if we come over here and reload it, we'll see those changes here. So if you want, you can just use the text editor right here. That is a fairly convenient one. Hit close, and this little plus sign in a box, that's where your new button is. So you can create a new file, new folder, do stuff right there. Do stuff is the key word, right? This is an active subject we learn by doing. So this was preview mode. We'll dig into it a little bit deeper. We'll get into all that other stuff that shows up in the template, make sure we explain those a few times, and then we'll just start using the template every time. But that's the basic idea. We use those opening and closing tags to mark up elements of text that we want to identify uniquely. There's other reasons we'll use markup language. We'll see some other ones. XML is a fairly popular, used to be a much more popular data transfer protocol. XML is better for strictly typed languages, and JSON is better for dynamically typed languages. And these days, most processing is going to happen in Python or JavaScript, which are dynamically typed. So we do most of our data transfer with JSON. But if you know what's going to be processed with, say, C++ on the other side, you actually get a lot of efficiency transferring it with XML, which is a markup language just like this. We make up tag names to identify parts of the data. There's also LaTeX. That's buried in here. LaTeX, but that's the math notation. You'll probably notice it's kind of hard to type some math stuff sometimes if you need like square roots and fractions. It doesn't type well. So this guy was trying to type something, and he was asking people about how to type the Greek letter chi in this big long 30-page paper, and people kept telling him to use X, and he got furious because it was a 30-page math paper. There was X all over the place. It's like, no, I don't want to type in it. There's already X's. I need a chi to be separate. So he invented a markup language that we do the math notation in. It's pretty standard. All your browsers and PDF editors will know it. Yeah, people kept telling him to use X, and he's
Fine, I'll make it myself.
Yeah, he was got so furious he made a markup language. So it's kind of related to what we're seeing of markup language. We also have markdown languages where we use special symbols. Instead of tags, we use special symbols. Like up is more, down is less. So we use special symbols to replace things for markdown languages. Which we'll probably look at some of those too. GitHub uses a markdown language on the README. Markup, but we'll be studying mostly markup languages, in particular HTML, and then CSS, which is the standard for styling them. Which, has anybody had any C++ before? Everybody's had C++. It's C++ structs, short for structures, and half the code is the browser has half the code, so we just write half of the code. But it's common enough that it's its own language. If anybody's seen C++ before, it is just a struct. Anybody have any questions about that stuff from today? There's a lot of stuff from today. So it's a 1-day week for our class. It's kind of preview mode. You'll want to get started into stuff. On Abby Learn, there's step-by-step instructions on setting up that domain host with pictures that hopefully aren't too far out of date. I didn't redo all the pictures this year, so the pictures are from last year. So hopefully, if any of them, like if the interface has changed, it's at least the same label. But if you get stuck on anything, let me know. I'm always happy to help. I'll look through there, see what's going on. Hop in the textbook and get started. They're setting stuff up, but there's some setup assignments for the domain hosting site, and
So that would just be like putting a hyperlink to your website would be how you turn that in.
yes, then your submission would just be grab that URL. So I'll just hit Alt D, go to the address bar, and then copy it. And I'll use this one. I go to student view and go to the submission. All you need to do is go to the website URL one and paste it in there. Which you can also paste text, but if you go to the website URL, it gives a preview of it too. But there's several ways to place text. Just send me the link to the website. Back to that the core idea of hypertext transfer protocol. Don't bother sending me all that information. It's already on the internet. Just tell me where to get it. Just tell me where your homework's at on the internet. I'll go get it. One thing I would ask is try to be consistent with names week to week, because sometimes typos happen and things. And if I can't find it, I will try to take a few guesses and look for it. I do know a couple tricks to see what's on the server, even though I don't have access to your server. I know how to a couple tricks that sometimes make the browser tell me what's on your server. least a list of files, or if you're consistent with naming, I can take a few guesses, but otherwise I'll reach out. I'll reach out to you if it doesn't work, but that's what the submissions will be like, kind of, yeah, go ahead and set up the domain hosting site, maybe start looking into that, but, start reading in the book, and we will get into HTML a lot more on Monday, and maybe start with the first little bit of styling as well. Probably won't hit the styling till Wednesday. Let me double check what the first week's homework is. I might push back the due date on the first week's homework, and so I don't want to make it due before we've talked about it in the class, even though it has it in the book, but keep an eye out for an announcement. I would probably push back the first week's homework because it was set up for a 2 days a week instead of 1 day. With the holiday this week.
Other things I see for homework do is the introductions, quiz for chapter 1 and 10, and then the setups.
Oh, there's not a chapter 1 webpage? Okay.
There's a learning activities under there, but like,
I'll double check.
yeah,
If there's some HTML and CSS to write on module 1, I will push that back for a week because I'm not going to make anything due before we talk about it in class.
Yeah, I don't know what chapter 1 is, introduction, chapter 2 is web development, or chapter 10 is web development. Those things it looks like was due the 22nd, so
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
So I guess I should have considered this prior to the classes, like what type of website, but since we have to create the domain, like, do you have examples of what some students chose for their websites or like?
It's,
They wanted to create?
I could like a long list of examples if you're looking for ideas, but whatever you want to create.
in the actual thing for.
Do you have some ideas of what you want to make, or are you looking for ideas?
Yeah. I know it could be any, I know it could be kind of broad, but I was just curious, like what some.
So a portfolio is first ones I always recommend. Instead of a resume, have a portfolio people can look at. Be a good start for that. Informational, do you have like hobbies or something? Do you have family scrapbooks? I've seen people do that. That's a good one. People have done business sites. It'll be a static site, so informational is what you want to think. Whatever you want to make, maybe try to brainstorm a couple ideas.
Oh,
Put together a list, but
That's a good start.
portfolio, scrapbook, family album for showing off your family, and different pages for you and your daughter or whatever. And if you have a hobby or something, or Freddie sitting right there, write about the favorite game review sites, game review websites, music review websites. I've seen those a couple times. TV review websites, and just getting things up. We will only see a couple, like one homework assignment on JavaScript, just barely introducing scripting. So we won't see enough to really do any dynamic stuff. You can include it if you want to look it up. Definitely see that in class. Just sharing information.
I think one of the things that's due Monday is.
Yeah. Seen like some history sites, Titanic is a popular one. I've seen that a couple times, like sort of history information on the Titanic, or I've seen show more disasters. I think the Revolutionary War site saw that at least once, but something to share information. So you have a little bit of time. I don't think the proposal on what you want to make isn't due to module 3.
I was just thinking, because we've got it up with the domain, so.
Oh,
And then make it kind of a line.
so you do have 3 accounts. So if you wanted to match what's in there, you can set your final on a different domain than your
Oh,
home.
gosh, this one can just be any.
Yeah, so you can do one that says homework, and then your second one do final.
And the photos look, I think, it's just,
Oh. I will look into that. I see the images, so it's probably pulling from when I taught the class last year.
well,
I will get those images back up there immediately. Any other questions?
So basically, the whole, that hello world is enough. It will be enough for us.
Yes, just something to,
Show that we've made a website.
yes, the which website exists. Some basic stuff. Okay, today is probably gonna be our longest day. There's one other day that will run a little bit long, but the other long day will probably run last 3 times I've taught the class, went to about 3:15. So today is probably the longest day because we had to go over all that policy stuff. And I wanted to just get up to the point that we were typing some code because that's what we're doing. Most of our lecture in class is going to be like that last bit. We'll type some code, talk about what we're typing, what it shrink down to. But lots and lots of examples. It's an active subject. Otherwise, if anybody has any questions, please reach out, let me know. I'm always happy to help. And I will see you all on Monday, and we'll jump into HTML and CSS, so making web pages and then making them look really, really nice. Well, have a good weekend.